Do you consider yourself someone that struggles with building muscle despite training hard and watching what you eat? Well, in today's video, I will share insights on how you can realize better muscle growth progress. In the past 2 years, I have personally been able to elevate my muscle growth results by gaining about 20 pounds of muscle, and I want to share some of the key lessons that I have learned. By describing my own process, I will share the muscle growth principles you need to consider if you want to take your muscle growth results to the next level. And I'll also be describing the specific training routine I have been following, since I get quite a few questions about my training program. First of all, some context about the 20 pounds of muscle gain that I have been able to realize in the past 2 years. The rate at which we can build muscle is quite individual. While a beginner trainee with good genetics may be able to build 20 pounds of muscle in a single year, an advanced lifter will be satisfied with gaining as little as 5 pounds of muscle in a year. The approach that I'm about to share with you helped me gain 20 pounds of muscle based on my level of training experience at the time. Around the beginning of 2020, I wasn't on top of my training as I am now. I definitely worked out consistently, but my approach wasn't as methodical. So while I was already over that newbie gains period, I still had a lot of untapped muscle growth, which I was able to tap into in the past 2 years. Also, it's worth mentioning that 2 years is quite a long time. You guys know me, I always keep it real with you, and if you want to make a big muscle growth transformation as an intermediate trainee, you simply are going to need quite some time. It took me 2 years to build up 20 pounds of extra muscle mass, since muscle growth simply is a slow process. Typically, if you see a video online where someone claims they have been able to build 20 pounds of muscle or more in less than a year, they are either a complete beginner trainee, they come from a training break so they have a lot of muscle memory, or they are taking performance-enhancing substances. I just want to put this out there to set some realistic expectations. Now let's dive straight into my approach by discussing the training routine I followed and the reasoning behind it. So for the past 2 years, I've been mostly training 4 times per week. I also have 1 day per week where I film content like this to provide these YouTube videos and Instagram videos, but I don't really count this as a workout day since the exercises I film tend to be quite random. In my 4-day training routine, I use an upper-lower split in which I target each muscle group 2 times per week. Some of the exercises in my training routine changed around every month or 2, and the number of sets that I did in my workouts also increased as I got more advanced in my training, but the foundation of the program looks as follows. On both upper body days, I train 6 to 7 exercises in total, as you can see on the screen. The main upper body compound movements that I train are the weighted pull-ups, bench press, overhead press, and barbell rows. I train the compound lifts mostly in a 6 to 8 rep range, so I can use a higher intensity and I can focus on progressively overloading the weights more effectively. The first 4 exercises of my upper body training are really the compound movements that provide the most bang for your buck, and then the last 3 exercises are the isolation movements that help me target weaker areas that I want to bring up. Since I wanted to bring up my arms and shoulders in the upper body workouts, I ended each upper body session with some isolated arms and shoulder work. Now, in regards to the lower body days, I trained 5 to 6 exercises on each lower body day, as you can see on the screen. The main compound movements trained here are the back squat, Romanian deadlift, Bulgarian split squats, and hip thrusts. I also incorporate some isolated leg exercises to train the large leg muscles with increased volume. With back squat variations, I typically train in a 4 to 6 rep range, since doing more than 8 repetitions on a back squat feels like cardio to me, but the rest of the leg exercises are trained with 8 or more repetitions. This upper-lower training structure is what I roughly maintained for 2 years. Of course, 2 years is a long time, so the exercises you see here are the typical options that I went for, but I also sometimes, for instance, replaced a Bulgarian split squat with a leg press. Also, my number of sets per muscle group increased as I progressed throughout this training program. For instance, in the beginning, I used to do 6 exercises and 18 sets in my upper body days, and now it's 7 exercises and about 23 sets. This volume increase is normal and to be expected, because as you advance in your training, your body tends to tolerate more volume, and you also typically need more volume to continue progressing. As a rule of thumb, whenever you have plateaued in strength on your main compound movements and your recovery and nutrition are all in check, you may be ready for a volume increase in the workouts you do. For a guide on how many sets per muscle group you should be doing in your training, I refer you to one of my previous videos on workout volume, and I'll link it in the description below. Now that you have an idea of how my workouts are programmed, let's look into the key learning lessons of the past 2 years. And the first lesson that I feel like had a big impact on my progress is appreciating that training feels hard. If I look at my training several years back, I used to do only exercises that I enjoyed doing and was avoiding some tough movements. For instance, I would skip exercises like Bulgarian split squats and go for like a leg extension. While training certainly needs to be fun and we want to avoid movements that cause physical pain, there also needs to be a commitment to get work done. This includes sometimes doing that tough and less enjoyable exercise if it benefits your progress. If we want great outcomes, then our actions need to map to that. This means that our workouts should be challenging and we want to push ourselves for more progressive overload. Muscle growth is by definition an adaptation to increased training demands, so give your body a reason to adapt. Challenge yourself more in training by lifting more weights progressively or doing more repetitions. This way, your body will be pushed to grow. Now, the second key lesson that ties closely into the first lesson is that if we want to train hard and push our limits, we also need to have a good focus on proper recovery. The only way you can maximally push yourself is if you're in a recovered state. If you are sleep deprived, underfed, and stressed, you are not in a position to give it your all when you are in the gym. So if I relate things to my process, I was going hard in the gym, but definitely also made sure that I got at least 7 hours of sleep on most days and managing my stress levels. In fact, I noticed a clear pattern that I made the best strength progress when I had consistent wake and sleep cycles and had low stress with work. Next to good recovery, we also want to have a focus on having proper technique in our exercises if we're going to be training hard in the gym, and this is key lesson number 3. Firstly, technique is important because you want to avoid injuries while training. Staying injury-free gives you longevity in your workout, so you have more time to make progress, and exercise technique plays an important role in staying injury-free. But also beyond injury management, the only way we can get the full benefits of an exercise is if you perform that movement properly. When I started training, I used to care about how much weight I lifted in the gym because I thought other people were watching. But as you advance out of your teenage years, you get a better grasp of what really matters in life and that your self-worth is not tied to your bench press strength. How much weight you can lift now is not relevant. Work with your starting point and use weights that challenge you. And only further increase the weight on an exercise if you are confident that you can handle this increased weight. Now, the fourth and last key lesson that I would like to discuss is related to nutrition. As I mentioned earlier, you don't want to be underfed in the process while trying to build muscle. One of the mistakes I made early on in my process is that I was always trying to get leaner. But if gaining muscle mass is your main goal, you want to give your body the proper building blocks. I have discussed this in one of my previous videos as well about lean bulking, and I will make a new video on lean bulking soon to give you an update. But in essence, the key message here is that you want to spend more time building up your body than breaking it down. So being in a calorie deficit for short-term fat loss is great, but you can't expect best muscle growth if you always aim to eat in a calorie deficit. I had 2 fat loss phases in these past 2 years, but I always made sure that these fat loss phases were short and efficient and no longer than 12 to 16 weeks. After these fat loss phases, I got back into either eating at maintenance or in a slight calorie surplus to focus more on muscle gain. And throughout the 2 years, I also made sure to get at least 1.6 grams per kilogram of my body weight in protein to provide my body the actual building blocks it needs to build muscle. But as mentioned, I will soon make a new video about lean bulking so you know how to effectively set up a lean bulking phase for yourself as well. For now, here are the key learning lessons summarized. To build muscle, it takes effort and you need to push yourself for progressive overload. Give your muscles a reason to adapt. We also need good recovery to make sure you can fully push yourself in the workouts. Next to that, your exercise technique is important to get the full benefits of each exercise you do. And lastly, structure your nutrition in a way that most of the time you are providing enough calories for your body to support the creation of new muscle mass. If you take these 4 key lessons while staying consistent and letting 1 to 2 years pass by, you will be in a great position. And that was all for today's video. I hope you now have a better understanding of how you can make meaningful muscle growth progress. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Also, if you found this video helpful, then leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I will see you in that next video.